All right, you guys, so this is going to be my Rebels Season 3 recap and review. We're going to take a look at some of the highlights of the season. Then we're also going to give a score for the season as a whole. And then I'm going to have some predictions for Season 4 towards the end of the video here. So episode 1 of Season 3 started off with a much older looking and a bit darker Ezra, where we see him killing off stormtroopers and sending walkers off of the side of a platform there in Season 1. So we got a much grittier and darker Ezra that we thought we would see going forward in this particular season, which unfortunately proved not to be true. However, the season made up for it in other ways, which we will go over as we progress through the season here. But again, Season 1 did start off with a bang and kind of wet our whistle a little bit for a darker Ezra, or for those of us who were hoping for Ezra to go dark. I am in that particular camp as well. It was very exciting to see him do what he did with the Walker and use the Force in that manner. After learning from the holocron. And we still don't know exactly what Ezra learned from the holocron. There is a line there where Sabine asked him, where did he learn to do that? Did Kanan train him to do that? And he simply states, no, he didn't. So there are some things that Ezra learned from that holocron that we probably have not seen him do yet, for the exception of what he did there. And our second episode, Holocrons of Fate, was one of the better episodes of the season, involving Maul and his search for Obi-Wan, using Ezra to retrieve Kanan's holocron, then combining the Sith and Jedi holocron to provide Maul and Ezra with some fragmented visions of Tatooine and Obi-Wan. So again, starting the season off with a bang with these 2 episodes back to back, giving us a little bit of darkness with Ezra, and then having Ezra involved with Maul once again, led us to believe that he was heading down this path, and this was going to be a very, very dark season, which it actually did turn out to be a dark season, but for different reasons. But it was another excellent episode that obviously brought Obi-Wan Kenobi into the picture for us. Of course, they didn't exactly come right out and say that to us, but if you watch the episode, you can kind of figure out that what Ezra and Maul were seeing there in their vision was obviously Tatooine, with the mention of the 2 sons. And then, of course, Maul states that he sees him, and obviously, who would he be looking for? He mentions that he is searching for Hope at one point before they actually commence the ceremony for looking through the holocrons. And then we find out that he states that he sees him, which obviously leads many of us to conclude that it's Obi-Wan that he is after. So it was a great tease to what we would get later on down the road in the season, and one of the better episodes and highlights of the season. Episode 3 introduced us to Wedge Antilles, where we saw Sabine go undercover to help extract Wedge and other Imperial pilots wanting to defect. We also got an excellent opportunity to see Sabine up close fighting skills with her tussle with Governor Price, who is looking to be Sabine's chief nemesis. So it was another excellent episode, 3rd episode in a row. I believe I may have scored it as high as an 8.5. I don't think there was a episode within the first 3 that I scored under an 8. I have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure. I know all 3 of those first episodes were solid episodes, and this obviously was the case with that episode. Episode 4 gave us Hera's Heroes and our first real confrontation with Thrawn. Obviously, there was a lot of anticipation with Thrawn's appearance in Rebels that introduced him to a new audience of Star Wars fans, as well as put Thrawn in a different time period for those who know the character from the novels. So those of us who remember his announcement that he would be on the show, or the announcement of him being on the show at Star Wars Celebration the year prior, you could see the excitement. If you saw that particular announcement, the room just exploded, the internet exploded with this announcement. So again, there was great anticipation of this character and what he would be like in this particular time period, and what he would have in store for the Rebels. Now, I will say with the character Thrawn, it was most definitely a slow burn through this particular season, and I know there are quite a few fans who not only share that, but probably would expand upon that. But I thought Thrawn was handled perfectly with this. I think he was brought in and introduced at a great pace for fans who don't know the character to understand what he's about, why he is so fascinated with art and culture, and how he uses that to his advantage to come up with his strategies, which again, if you saw my reaction to the season finale, had it not been for the Bendu and Commander Sato's axe, Thrawn would have wiped out that portion of the rebellion. Episode 5 was a Clone Wars nostalgic trip with battle droids, destroyers, the Separatist army. So for me, this was a very enjoyable episode. Being a fan of the Clone Wars, it was great to see Rex taking out clankers once again. So excellent episode, great nostalgic trip, guys. I really enjoyed that episode. I know a lot of people thought it was a filler episode, but I enjoyed it, and I know most Clone Wars fans enjoyed that episode. Episode 6, Imperial Super Commandos, saw Vin Rao's protectors wiped out by Gar Saxon, who rules Mandalore as the Emperor's hand. So we learned a little about Sabine's mother, the state of Mandalore. This was a great setup for events that we would see unfold later in the series in regards to Mandalore and so the background on Sabine as well. Episode 7 and 8, Iron Squadron and the Wakethu Job, respectively, were slower episodes. However, episode 9 and Inside Man gave us our first taste of Thrawn's ruthlessness as he forces a worker to test out a speeder bike that Thrawn knows to be defective and dangerous, actually killing the Lothal native. Later on in the episode, we get our reveal of Agent Kallus as Fulcrum. So a very important episode here, because again, we are getting our, as I had mentioned earlier with my thoughts on Thrawn, it is a slow burn, but they are developing the character as the season goes on. So we know how ruthless Thrawn is, all the way to the point that he will force a worker to test out his product, knowing it's defective and that it may kill him. And that actually is what happens there in that particular scene. So a very, very important point for Thrawn and those who are getting to know Thrawn and what he is capable of. And then, of course, our reveal of Agent Kallus, which is also another pivotal point in the season. Obviously, there were many of us who suspected that Kallus would be or is the Fulcrum agent, replacing Ahsoka as the former Fulcrum agent. So obviously that reveal was not a huge surprise to many. Nonetheless, it was great to have that out in the open. So another great episode for the season. So in episode 10, Vision and Voices, we get back to Maul's arc, where he again needs Ezra's help in finding Obi-Wan. He seeks to use the Night Sisters' magic to help make sense of the visions that both him and Ezra saw in the Holocrons of Fate episode. So again, this was another Maul-centric episode, bringing Ezra back into the fold and again tempting him with that darkness. We got some great visuals in this particular episode. A great scene where Sabine and Kanan are possessed by the Night Sisters, and Ezra is forced to engage them in battle. without harming them. So excellent episode. And again, this is a arc that is leading us to a larger story or a larger conclusion that we most definitely got fulfilled towards the end of the season. So again, another very good episode here at episode 10. All right, so episode 11, Ghosts of Geonosis. So after the mid-season break and the premiere of Rogue One, which featured Clone Wars character Saw Gerrera, we were treated with an appearance of the character in Rebels, voiced by the actor himself, Forrest Whitaker, which was very exciting. As for the two-part episode itself, it was okay. We did learn that some of the Geonosians survived the attempted genocide. Shout out to Click Clack, by the way. But the episode itself was a failed mission to get information on what the Empire was building, even though Click Clack drew them a picture of the Death Star that they read incorrectly. And then, of course, they also failed to get proof of the Empire's attempted genocide of the Geonosians when they lost the containers which stored the poison. So again, it was a decent episode, not the greatest episode. I don't think it needed a two-part episode. I think it could have done well with 30 minutes or 22 minutes of time there. I think it was just to feature the character Saw Gerrera. Again, the only good information that we got out of that episode was the fact that the Geonosians survived and that there was and we got to see the poison containers which they used to try to kill them off. So there wasn't really a lot to take from that episode, but nonetheless, it was great to see. Episode 13, Warhead, was an episode that I actually really enjoyed, although I know most thought it was a filler episode. However, we did get the use of the Macquarie concept for C-3PO, used as the Imperial probe droid. What really made this episode so much fun is the fact that you had the C-3PO concept droid going against the Chewbacca concept character in Zeb Aurelius. For those who do not know, Zeb actually comes from the concept art for the original Chewbacca, and then again, the Warhead droid was the original concept for C-3PO. So very exciting to see those two actually do battle. Can you imagine C-3PO actually going against Chewbacca? The fight wouldn't last a second, I don't think. But this was a pretty good battle between the two, and very nice to see. So I actually did enjoy that episode. However, I do understand that some thought that episode may have been a filler or maybe a little bit slow, but I did enjoy the episode. Episode 14, Trials of the Darksaber. This was an awesome episode that gave us some great insight on saber training, how the sabers are drawn to each other, and their energy. Then, of course, there is Sabine and the reveal of her backstory, her recruitment into the Empire, and how she built weapons that were used to enslave her people, the fact that her family turned on her. So this episode is easily a top 10 in the series as a whole. It may even fall higher if I really put some thought into it and break it down. But it again was one of probably the I'm not going to say the best episode of this particular season, but most definitely up there within the top 3. And that's just off of the top of my head here. I haven't even really thought about what order I would, or these episodes as the best. So, but this one is one of my favorites because it involves the saber training. We got some great insight into Sabine, and then of course it lets us know what is going on Mandalore, or what has happened on Mandalore. Which are events that have not been told to us in any of the stories, comic books, films, or what have you. So this is obviously a great episode for those who love Mandalorians, and I know there is a large group of Star Wars fans who are fascinated with the Mandalorian. So I think this particular season, you guys got quite a bit of lore in regards to Mandalore and what they're all about. So I know those individuals enjoyed this particular episode probably even more than I did. Then, of course, the biggest reveal of this episode is the origin of the Darksaber and its original owner, Tar Vizsla, a Mandalorian Jedi. Also, we got a mention of the Jedi and Mandalorian War from Kanan. So there was a lot of information that came out of this episode, not only with the Darksaber training and the background on Sabine, but we also got a mention of the Mandalorian War, which we those of us who are familiar with the EU know about that version of the Mandalorian War. It'll be interesting to see what Disney and the Star Wars Story Group decide to make canon about that Mandalorian Jedi War. So that'll be interesting as well. And then, of course, with everything going on with Tar Vizsla and the introduction of that particular character, it is very possible that we can, and again, this character, from what I'm assuming, is coming from the old Republic era, which I believe is 1,000 years ahead of where we are at this point in the timeline. So we could very well receive a old Republic story, which is based around Tar Vizsla and him being a Jedi in the Order. So that will be interesting as well. I mean, there are several different ways that you can spin this or take from this that I think will thrill Star Wars fans. I know I'm thrilled, and I love Mandalorians, but they're not my huge number one aspect from the Star Wars lore. But I can tell you one thing: I am very interested in Tar Vizsla. Very interested in the history of the Darksaber and the fact that he was a Jedi. So again, as I had mentioned, probably one of the better episodes in the entire series of Star Wars Rebels because of so much information that was laid on us. And then, of course, Sabine's backstory, and then, of course, the saber training and all of that. Just an excellent, excellent episode. I wouldn't be surprised if most people had this episode as their favorite episode of the series. Episode 15, Legacy of Mandalore. Here we get to meet Sabine's mother, who I thought would be Bo-Katan Kryze, but she is in fact Ursa Wren. We are also introduced to her brother Tristan Wren. This was another solid episode revealing what Clan Wren suffered due to Sabine running away. It also gave us the end of Gar Saxon's reign over Mandalore, which has thrown Mandalore into chaos. And then, of course, we also got a saber battle with two non-Force users as well, which I believe is the first time that has happened in canon. Anyway, I don't know if that is there's a story in EU where two non-Force users engaged in a saber battle. Episode 16, Through Imperial Eyes. So here we get to catch up with Kallus, with Thrawn close to finding out that he is Fulcrum. I love the first person view that we get from the start of this episode, so I really enjoyed this episode as well. And of course, this episode leads us up to one of the final episodes in regards to Kallus and what happens to him. So it's a very good episode. In episode 18, Secret Cargo, we get our first look at Mon Mothma, who is still a part of the Senate, but she is on the run from the Empire due to her outspokenness on the Emperor. So here we get to see the formation of a larger rebellion. We also get to see how Mon Mothma became head of the rebellion. And then, of course, we get to see Dantooine from the atmosphere anyway. So some very, very exciting stuff, and a very important and pivotal episode, as it again gives us a little bit of backstory on Mon Mothma and what her role is in regards to the rebellion, and why it is that she is ahead the head of the rebellion at the point that we see her in Rogue One, and then going forward into A New Hope and the other original trilogy. So the one thing that you have to say about Rebels is that it is doing a very good job of filling in those gaps in between the movies, the comic books, and other stories that come out from the Star Wars canon. So again, for those of you who are not watching this, those Star Wars fans who are not watching this series, I want to tell you again, if you are not watching this series, you are missing out on some very key elements that go right along with the stories that you already know. So some things that you may not know about, Star Wars Rebels will fill you in on that stuff. So guys need to start watching this series. All right, so episode 19, Twin Sons. So after the Holocron of Faith episode, a lot of us Star Wars fans figured we would be getting Obi-Wan, but the mid-season trailer confirmed that, as well as the long-awaited rematch of Maul versus Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, to this point, both opponents were 1-1, one loss and one win. This would be the tiebreaker. So the first thing I would like to address is the length of the fight. I know there have been quite a few fans who were disappointed that the fight was so short, but there's a couple of things that you guys have to factor in here. The first being that the showrunner, Dave Filoni, when addressing the length of the fight, he mentioned it as a master samurai style of fight. And usually, if you've ever seen any of those samurai flicks or any of the old kung fu flicks back in the day, whenever you had this type of battle, especially involving a master, usually the battle isn't all that long. And then also the other thing that we have to take into account here is at this particular point where Obi is in his particular life and where Maul is in his life, and it's even mentioned in the dialogue between the two as they are speaking. Obi-Wan has grown and moved past a lot of the stuff that would have actually held him back. And whereas Maul is still clinging to the past, still holding on to the past, so much so that he's chased Obi-Wan down all the way to this desert, almost killing himself to find Obi-Wan. And now he is here faced with meeting up with Obi-Wan in this duel. So those are a couple of things that you want to factor in when thinking about the length of this fight. And then the other thing that that caught my attention, and I don't even know if this is so, it's just something that I noticed as I watched the battle myself, is you notice that Obi-Wan switches his stance. He does his traditional stance with the saber, one hand over his head, and then he's doing the two-finger point right there. And then you see him adjust his stance to this form, which we've seen Qui-Gon use against Maul as well. And if you look at Maul, there is a point where he also changes his stance. Once he sees that Obi-Wan has changed his stance, he actually adjusts his feet to a different position. So it's kind of a chess match that is being played between the two before the fight even begins, and they're sizing each other up and seeing which style each opponent is going to use going into this fight. This was an excellent episode. Loved Chopper in this episode as well. Got a few chuckles from Chopper out of this episode as well. Ezra was pretty good in this episode as well. So I thoroughly love this episode. And again, this is another top 10 episode for the series out of this season. If I had to estimate, and again, I haven't thought about any of this at all, it's just coming to me right now, but I would have to say there's probably at least 3 episodes from this season that are top 10 quality for the series as a whole. So one of the best, if not the best episode of Rebels. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the best season of Rebels, and I haven't even gotten to the finale yet, guys. So excellent episode here, guys, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know a bunch of people enjoyed it as well. The buzz continued on for several days after this episode, leading right up into the finale, which premiered that following week. Episode 20 and 21, 0 Hour, the finale. So in this episode, we finally got to see Thrawn's plan come to fruition. He located the rebel base using and trapping Agent Callus. We also got an excellent fight between the two. We also received epic-like Rogue One space battles, along with Clone Wars styles ground battles. Again, if not for the sacrifice of Sato and the help of the Bendu, Thrawn would have wiped out Dodonna's squadron and the Phoenix squadron. So again, guys, this was an excellent finale to cap off an outstanding season. So my score for this season 3 is going to be a very solid 10. There were very few episodes that I did not like. There were a couple of the so-called slower episodes that I really enjoyed, like The Last Battle and Warhead. Like I stated before, there were at least 3 to 4 episodes that could easily be top 10 for this series as a whole in this season. So that is why I gave this season an absolute solid 10. All right, so my predictions for season 4. So I believe we're going to get some key characters from Rogue One to show up in season 4, like Krennic and Galen Erso. We already know that we're going to see Saw Gerrera again. Jane Erso, we may get, however, at this point, she is not with Saw, nor is she with the Rebellion. So my guess is if we do get to see her, it will be in a one-off episode or a standalone episode. I also believe that season 4 is going to be the final season for Star Wars Rebels, as it will take us right up to the events of Rogue One, which means the fate of Kanan and Ezra will also have to come to some kind of conclusion as well. As we get closer to Rogue One, the Jedi are just about wiped out. And remember, it is Vader who eventually takes out the remaining Jedi. So it'll be interesting to see if there will be a confrontation between Vader, Kanan, and Ezra. Another confrontation between those three, resulting in the death of Kanan, which is what I'm predicting here. Because again, Vader is the one that is responsible for taking out the Jedi. I believe he will be the one to take out Kanan Jarrus. Now, in regards to Ezra, I believe Ezra actually survives past Rebels and even on into the original trilogies, possibly showing up in Episode 8. I'm actually still giving out or holding out hope that he will show up in Episode 8. So I'm going to predict that he actually does survive through not only the events of Scarif and New Hope and the original trilogies, but we're actually going to see him in Episode 8. So guys, those are my preliminary predictions for Season 4. And then of course, we're obviously going to much deeper into Mandalore and how Sabine is affecting Mandalore and what's going on Mandalore there. So that most definitely will be a huge part of Season 4 as well. And probably will, I'm assuming that the new series that Filoni is working on is going to be, my two top guesses is going to be, it's either going to be a Mandalorian story involving Sabine and the events of Mandalore during the time of the original trilogies, or, and I actually prefer this one, they're going to take us back to the Old Republic, and they're going to tell the story of not only Tar Vizsla, or involve Tar Vizsla, or it will be a story probably based around Tar Vizsla and all of the events that are going on during the time of the Old Republic. So I would really enjoy an animated series that is involving the Old Republic and all of the events that are taking place at that particular time. So guys, those are my predictions for next season and beyond. But what I would really like to know is, what were your thoughts for this season? Did you enjoy the season? Did you think that it was one of the best seasons ever for Rebels like I do? And then also, because we hear this all the time amongst discussions between Star Wars fans, do you prefer the Clone Wars animated series over Rebels? Do you enjoy them both equally as I do? So what is your take on that? Do you enjoy one over the other? Please leave those comments down below. I would really like to know and conversate with you guys about that. And then also, please leave your predictions on what you think will happen for next season. Can't wait for next season. And then also, guys, just as a very quick announcement here, and I mentioned this in a couple of videos, but I thought I would say it here as well. I will be attending Star Wars Celebration, and my #1 panel will be Star Wars Rebels. So I most definitely will be reporting and creating video in regards to my experience at Star Wars Celebration. This is my first time at Star Wars Celebration, so I cannot wait, and I want to share it with you guys. So I'm going to be putting out content and video in regards to Celebration and the goings on there. So please like and make sure you subscribe so you can get all of that content. And from the Father to the Son and the Obi-Wan Force Ghost, may the Force be with you always.